Los Angeles, January 15th, 1947. The sky over Los Angeles was grey, as though it too was holding its breath. Betty Bersinger had taken her 3-year-old daughter out for a walk. The morning was cold but manageable, the kind of winter day that still carried a promise of warmth behind its chill. She didn't expect her stroll through Lemet Park to become history. She didn't expect to discover the most horrific sight the city had ever seen. What she first thought was a broken mannequin lay stretched out in the grass, just beyond the sidewalk near Norton Avenue. A pale, bisected torso, legs splayed like a discarded doll. The body had been sliced clean at the waist. Her skin was white, too white, drained of every drop of blood. Her mouth, grotesquely slashed from ear to ear in a joker's grin, seemed to laugh at the horror. It wasn't a mannequin, it was a woman. Elizabeth Short had arrived in Los Angeles months earlier with dreams so blinding they cast shadows. Everyone called her the Black Dahlia, a nickname inspired by the mystery film The Blue Dahlia, and her fondness for black dresses, dark curls, and the night. She came chasing the golden promise of Hollywood. But the only stars she touched were street lamps, reflected in puddles. The police arrived quickly. Reporters even quicker. This was LA, after all. The crime scene was hellishly clean. No blood, no drag marks, no struggle. The body had been washed and posed deliberately. Her intestines were tucked neatly beneath her buttocks, her breasts mutilated. Her face, that terrible, frozen grin, mocked the onlookers. It was more than a killing. It was a message, a ritual, a performance. Detectives Harry Hansen and Finis Brown of the LAPD Homicide Division took over the case. They stood over the bisected corpse, their shoes wet with dew and dread. No blood, Brown whispered, squinting. No rage, Hansen added. This was planned. She was cut clean through at the lumbar spine, a surgical technique known only to someone with medical experience. The precision chilled them more than the body did. The coroner's office worked with what little they had. No purse, no ID, no belongings, just the body, mutilated and mocking. But then fingerprints lifted from the corpse's shriveled hands matched a set taken from a 1943 arrest in Santa Barbara. That's when she was caught for underage drinking. Her name, Elizabeth Short, 22 years old, Massachusetts native, dreamer, dancer, drifter. The newspapers pounced on it. The Black Dahlia murder. The pretty girl who dreamed too much. The city's darkest flower found dead. The headlines were lurid, sensational, cruel. They painted her as a femme fatale, a seductress, a siren swallowed by her own mystery. But the truth was far more tragic. Elizabeth didn't have enemies. She had ghosts. Detectives began the slow, brutal excavation of her life. She drifted through boarding houses and low-rent hotels. She worked as a waitress, posed for wannabe photographers, relied on the kindness of men who expected more than she could give. And always, she waited for the call from a casting agent that never came. Waited for a break, for something, anything. She called her mother shortly before her death, lying that she had landed a movie deal. Her mother was proud, and Elizabeth was silent. The truth was darker than even she could admit. Leads poured in, each more twisted than the last. Men came forward to claim they knew her, loved her, hated her. Tip lines overflowed, but none led anywhere. Then, for days after the discovery of the body, the Los Angeles Examiner received a package. Inside, Elizabeth's birth certificate, her social security card, her personal photos, an address book with pages torn, and a chilling note pasted together from magazine cutouts. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow. The sender signed it. The Black Dahlia Avenger. The taunting had begun. Detectives traced the address book to a man named Mark Hansen, a local nightclub owner who had let Elizabeth stay with him briefly. He claimed they were just friends, but his name was on her lips in her final days. More letters arrived, each more deranged than the last. The Avenger's writing was jagged, playful, full of venom. He mocked the investigation, dared them to catch him. He claimed he'd kill again, but the killer vanished like smoke. As days turned into weeks, suspicion fell on dozens. A surgeon who once dated her, a bellhop who saw her last, a drifter who claimed to see demons, a Hollywood producer. Even women were not above suspicion. Each theory added a new shade of horror. Elizabeth had been lured, tortured, drained of blood. She'd been kept alive during some of the mutilations. Her screams had gone unheard, or worse, enjoyed. But every lead died in the dark. Los Angeles moved on. The streets didn't. The alleyways still whispered. The fog in Limit Park still knew her name. And somewhere, the man who tore Elizabeth short apart was still breathing, watching, maybe even laughing. Because monsters don't always live under beds. Sometimes they live next door. The morgue was cold, not just in temperature, but in memory. Elizabeth's body lay under the harsh fluorescent lights, dissected a second time, this time by coroner Frederick Newbar. He tried to make sense of the madness carved into flesh. Her organs were intact, but rearranged. Her stomach was filled with fecal matter, possibly forced. The lacerations on her mouth, so precise, were likely done while she was still alive. She had suffered, unimaginably. The coroner could only whisper one word to the detective at his side: sadism. Detectives Hansen and Brown stood outside the autopsy room with coffee gone cold in their hands. The crime had no passion, no panic. It was done calmly, lovingly, with purpose. Brown rubbed his temples. "We're not hunting a man," he muttered. "We're hunting a goddamn artist." The newspapers were eating it up. Headlines grew crueler by the day. The lady was a tramp, too beautiful to live. But the woman beneath the headlines was unraveling in pieces. Elizabeth Short, no fixed address, no job, 100 promises, 1,000 disappointments. She'd been seen just days before her murder at the Biltmore Hotel. Last confirmed sighting, she was waiting for a man. No one remembered his face, only that she looked tired and cold. Then came the phone calls. Reporters at the Examiner began receiving anonymous tips. A man claiming to be the killer, calm, articulate, eerily polite, offered clues only someone close to the case would know. He signed off every time the same way: expect more gifts. 3 days later, they got one. A suitcase was found in a Greyhound station locker downtown. Inside were blood-stained women's clothing, a pair of black heels, a handbag, a belt with human hair stuck to the buckle. The fingerprints were wiped clean with gasoline. The case file grew fat. More than 60 suspects were interviewed. Some confessed, desperate for infamy. Others claimed to have visions of her death. Psychics offered sketches. None helped. Then someone did. Dr. George Hodel, surgeon, socialite, collector of oddities. He entered the police radar when his name was found in Elizabeth's torn address book. And because of a tip, anonymous but precise, that Hodel had hosted parties where women were degraded, photographed, and sometimes disappeared. Hodel's home at 5121 Franklin Avenue was a Mayan-style fortress. Its black brick walls hid secrets like a mausoleum. Detectives set up surveillance. For weeks, they bugged his home. The tapes were terrifying. Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary. She's dead. A pause, laughter, running water, screams, or static. But they couldn't touch him. Not yet. Not without a body. Not without a witness. And Hodal was too careful, too rich, too connected. So the detectives waited. But the darkness didn't. A second body was found. Not bisected, but strangled, nude, dumped on the edge of MacArthur Park. Another young woman with Elizabeth's black curls and desperate smile. The press called her the Dahlia copycat. The police called it escalation. Meanwhile, the letters returned. This time, handwritten. You failed to catch me again. I'm in your city, breathing your air. She smiled, she begged. She died pretty, the Avenger. The handwriting matched nothing, but the envelope was dusted. A partial thumbprint. It wasn't in the system. Yet the city began to change. Women refused to walk alone at night. Shop windows sold knives disguised as lipstick tubes. Taxi drivers carried baseball bats under their seats. Hollywood starlets paid for armed guards. Everyone knew the name Black Dahlia, but no one knew the man behind her death. Not yet. Detective Hansen began drinking more. He kept Elizabeth's autopsy photo in his desk drawer, stared at it when the leads ran dry. There was something in her eyes, even in death. Something pleading, as if her soul were trapped, waiting for justice. He swore once he heard her whisper his name when he dozed off at his desk. At night, in Hodal's house, the tapes kept running, and the voices grew louder. A neighbor called one night to report screams. Not human, not quite, from behind Hodal's thick stone walls. But when officers arrived, the place was silent, only incense, and a pig's head, freshly severed, sitting on the front steps. The investigators made a final request: tear up the garden. Beneath the rose bushes, they found something. Bones, human, female, but too degraded to match. The Black Dahlia still had no justice, but now she had company. The Avenger had gone silent, but his shadow stretched long and wide. The police feared he had either stopped, or worse, gotten better. They say time heals, but in Los Angeles, time just buries the truth beneath layers of smog and silence. 3 months had passed since the discovery of Elizabeth Short's body, and the city had learned to breathe again. Barely. The headlines had grown smaller. The Avenger's letters had stopped, but the memory remained. Detective Harry Hansen hadn't slept a full night since January. He kept waking at 3:13 a.m. The time Elizabeth's body had been estimated to be left in the lot. The time she was given back to the earth, mutilated, desecrated, arranged like art. And lately, he swore she was trying to speak. In dreams, she stood in that vacant lot again, nude, bisected. Her body slowly pulling itself together. Ligaments twisting, bones realigning, eyes wide open, staring at him. And always, she said the same thing. You're looking in the wrong places. The department was growing tired of the case. Politicians wanted it closed. The public wanted blood. And the press wanted a monster, so they created one. Leslie Dillon, bellhop, drifter, amateur writer of pulp horror stories, had an odd fascination with autopsies. He came forward voluntarily, offering a theory so detailed it disturbed even the veterans. He claimed the killer was a friend of his, a mortician, knew how to drain a body, cut it clean, hide the mess. But then, he slipped. The smile, it wasn't just a slice. The flesh was peeled back, like ribbons. No one had released that detail, not even to the press. They held him. He cracked under interrogation, then changed his story. Said he was being framed. Said the real killer was Dr. George Hodel. The name again. Hodel was brought in for questioning, smiling, calm. "You've got quite the imagination," he told the detective. "But fantasies don't hold up in court. No evidence, no confession, no arrest. The deeper they dug, the darker he became." He had studied surgery in Paris, performed abortions in secret, hosted underground orgies at his home, featuring masks, knives, and unconscious women. Some never resurfaced. And 1 year later, he fled to the Philippines. Without warning, no charges, no extradition, just gone, like smoke. The case files stacked higher. Then they got the film. A local photo developer turned in something strange. A roll of black and white negatives, 23 images. Most were abstract, shadows, blurs, angles of flesh. But one frame was different. A woman, black hair, naked, bound, grinning, but not with her mouth, with blood. It wasn't Elizabeth, but it could have been. Hansen started to lose time. He would find himself standing in alleyways with no memory of how he got there. He forgot his wife's birthday, called in sick, then sat outside the Biltmore Hotel for hours, watching strangers come and go. He kept thinking about what Elizabeth had said in the dream. "You're looking in the wrong places." So he started looking in forbidden places. Files from other departments, missing girls, cold cases, deaths labeled suicide that didn't quite fit, faces that looked like hers, expressions frozen in horror. He started seeing patterns. 1945. A girl found disemboweled in Ventura, no suspect. 1946. Woman's legs washed up near Long Beach, no torso. 1947. The Dahlia. 1948. Woman found in bathtub, bloodless. 1949. A torso in Griffith Park. Always clean cuts. Always a vanished suspect. Always women with dark hair, pretty smiles, and no one to miss them. The city had its own rhythm of death. It pulsed under the neon signs. It whispered from the cracks in the pavement. And someone had been listening to it for years. One night, Hansen followed a new lead. An anonymous tip written in lipstick on the windshield of his car. 5121 Franklin. Looked deeper. That was Hodel's old house. The city had repossessed it after he fled. It was empty now, or so they said. Hansen brought no backup. He entered the house through a broken cellar door. The lights didn't work, but the moonlight came through the skylight, pale and trembling. The interior was suffocating. Dust choked the air. On the walls, faded murals of women, all with their mouths open, screaming, but silent. The basement door was unlocked. Below ground, the air changed, thick, wet, sour, and something else. Perfume. No, formaldehyde. He found the slab first. Cold steel, stained, grooved. Then the jars, dozens, lined neatly on shelves. Inside them, teeth, fingers, clumps of hair, but not bones. Parts, preserved, labeled, like museum pieces. He found a Polaroid hidden behind a false wall. It showed a woman, bound, mouth mutilated, the grin again. And in the background, a mirror. And in that mirror, a man holding the camera, wearing a surgeon's mask, eyes smiling. Hansen vomited, then ran. He didn't tell the department. He didn't file a report. because he understood now that Dahlia wasn't the beginning. She was the centerpiece, and the city was the gallery. That night, he burned every photo, every copy of the case file. But still, she came in his dreams, whole now, still smiling, still whispering. You know his name. But do you know his hunger? The dreams had changed. Elizabeth no longer whispered, now she screamed. Detective Hansen awoke, clawing at his throat. He'd dreamt of drowning, not in water, but in blood. Gallons of it, rising in a steel basin, flooding over his boots, dragging him down with the weight of every unsolved case, every forgotten name, every girl left behind in alleys and basements. He hadn't opened a Dahlia file in 2 weeks, but she never left him, and neither did the house. 5121 Franklin Avenue, the old Hodel residence. He'd gone back, not officially, not with a warrant, just to look. The door was locked this time, windows sealed. But the whispering started as soon as he stepped on the porch. It wasn't words, just breathing. He reached out to a former vice cop who had worked undercover in the 1940s. The man was old, fragile, nearly blind, but his voice was steady when Hansen asked about George Hodel. That man didn't kill women, the old cop said. He harvested them. What the hell does that mean? Hansen asked. The old man looked away. Some people kill to silence, others kill to feed. Meanwhile, across the city, a janitor cleaning an abandoned warehouse in Boyle Heights found something strange. A chair, bolted to the floor, leather straps on the arms and legs, a mirror cracked on the opposite wall, and behind the mirror, a dark room, trays still wet, chemical stink thick in the air. Inside the drying rack, photographs. One of them showed Elizabeth Short, still alive, eyes swollen shut, teeth broken, a man's hand gripping her hair. Behind her, painted on the wall, the words, "The second Dahlia." The LAPD tried to keep it quiet, but word leaked. It always did, and so did the nightmares. Switching perspective, the killer. He sits in a hotel room in San Francisco now. Watches the city move outside his window like blood through veins. He misses Los Angeles, misses her smell, the warm rot of ambition, sweat, sex, and old money. They think he's gone, that he stopped. Fools. He doesn't stop. He waits, because art isn't rushed. It must ache. He writes letters sometimes, not to the press anymore. No, now he writes to the girls, the ones who come to Hollywood wide-eyed, hungry. He watches them at diners, at casting calls, at motels. He picks the ones with no one waiting back home, the ones who won't be missed. And when he's ready, he brings them flowers, dahlias, always, black-stained, wilted, tied with a red silk ribbon. Back to Hansen. His hands shake more now. The nightmares bleed into daylight. One morning, he finds his own file on his desk. Opened, marked. Someone has underlined a sentence from a psychiatric evaluation dated 1942. Officer Hansen exhibits dissociative traits, possible trauma-related fugue episodes following wartime service. He doesn't remember writing it, or even being evaluated. One night, alone in the precinct, he hears static, a phone line off the hook somewhere. He follows the sound to the evidence locker. It's coming from a tape recorder, unlabeled, old. He hits play, a woman's voice, crying, then humming, then choking, then a man. You'll be famous, just like her. The tape ends in a scream that turns into laughter. His own, he calls his wife, but she doesn't answer, because she left 2 weeks ago. because he forgot her name during a conversation, because he started calling her Beth. Something is breaking inside him, or maybe something's waking up. He dreams of holding the scalpel, feeling the tension of flesh under steel. He wakes up with blood under his nails. His sink smells like bleach, and he doesn't remember cleaning. Back to the killer. He's back in LA now. He walks by the Norton lot every night. The grass grows too fast there. The earth is hungry. No one builds on that patch. The real estate agents say it's cursed. He knows better, that land remembers. It wants more. Hansen returns to the Hodel house one last time. He forces open the basement hatch. This time, he brings a lantern. There's something behind the wall. He breaks through drywall, dust choking the air, and he finds another room, windowless, soundproof, stained with old screams, and etched into the floor in chalk. The gallery lives. Hansen kneels down. Something calls to him beneath the concrete. He claws at it until his fingers bleed. Finds something smooth, buried shallow, wrapped in silk. He pulls it free. It's a jawbone, still wet, still smiling. Los Angeles was rotting. Not just its air, or its alleys, or its dreams, but its soul. And somewhere beneath the city, something had taken root. Something old, something that fed. Detective Hansen was unraveling. He no longer recognized his own handwriting. Notes appeared on his desk in red ink. His pen, but not his words. Find the mother. The roots are deeper than bone. She's not the first. She won't be the last. He couldn't sleep. He didn't dare. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Elizabeth. But not the way the world remembered her. He saw her before. Alive, tied to a chair, eyes wide, silent. Not from fear, from resignation. Like she'd been there before. Like she knew. He went back to the jawbone. Had it tested off the record. It belonged to a woman in her 20s. Not Elizabeth. Not in any missing person report. Someone forgotten. Another Dahlia. Switching perspective. The killer. He keeps his hands clean. Always. No fingerprints. No noise. No blood where it shouldn't be. It's not murder. It's ritual. A harvest. He has names written in ink on vellum. Ancient names. From books bound in skin. He believes he's chosen. He believes Elizabeth wasn't the beginning, she was the key. Each girl is a glyph. Each cut a syllable in a language older than time. He carves stories into their flesh, spells into their bones, and the city listens. Back to Hansen, he begins to suspect himself. He wakes up in a motel in Topanga Canyon. No memory of driving there. There's a red silk ribbon in the glove compartment. He checks his own wallet. There's a photograph. A woman he doesn't recognize, smiling, black hair, green eyes. Written on the back, soon he breaks into the department archive, looks up himself. What he finds chills him. He was born Henry Allen Weiss, not Hansen, adopted at 7 years old. Original parents unknown. A boy found wandering near a train track outside El Paso. Clothes soaked in blood. No family ever claimed him. He calls a priest, not for confession, for exorcism. The priest laughs at first, then hears the tape Hansen plays, the one from the evidence locker. The priest goes pale. That voice at the end, he whispers. It's speaking in Enochian. The hell is that? The language of angels, the priest says. Or demons. That night, Hansen receives a package. No return address. Inside, a mirror, small and cracked. And a note. You can only kill what you can see. Look closely. He smashes the mirror. Behind it is another photo. This time, it's him, standing beside Elizabeth Short, grinning, holding the scalpel. He vomits, curls on the floor, cries for a long time. Then, silence. And in the silence, a voice not from outside, but inside. "You were there, Henry. You just forgot." Switching perspective. The killer, he sees the city like a body now. The streets are veins. The sirens are heartbeats. He moves through it like a parasite. Silent, hungry, patient. He feels Hansen getting closer. He likes Hansen, a detective with blood on his shoes and a broken past. Perfect symmetry. He considers letting him join the gallery. But first he needs one more, Dahlia. He chooses Marcy Ellison, 22, aspiring actress, waitress at a club on Sunset. No family within 500 miles. He watches her for 4 nights. On the 5th, he brings her flowers, Black Dahlias, back to Hansen. He's at the beach, middle of the night, feet buried in the sand, hands shaking. He doesn't know why he's there. Then a scream cuts the sky. He runs toward it, finds a girl, Marcy, stumbling from a cave, covered in blood, whispers one word, gallery, then collapses. Hansen carries her to the car. She's alive, barely. But what she says next makes his blood freeze. "You were there, you watched." He drives straight to 5121 Franklin, breaks down the basement wall again. There's a tunnel behind it now. He follows it, deep, cold, wet. He loses time, emerges in a cavern under the house. In the walls, bones, thousands, arranged like ribs in a cathedral. In the center, a slab, on it, a book, bound in skin. The title burned into the flesh, The Black Gospel. He opens it. Inside are drawings, anatomical, erotic, violent, women, bound, mutilated, transformed, and scrawled in the margins. Each offering makes the city breathe. Each girl feeds the soil. The garden grows beneath. He hears footsteps behind him, turns, but there's no one. Only a whisper in the dark. Welcome home, somewhere beneath Los Angeles. Time had stopped. Detective Hansen didn't know how long he'd been in the cavern. The air didn't move. The walls breathed. And the book, the one bound in skin, whispered when he touched it. Not with words, but with memory. He saw her again. Elizabeth tied to the slab, not screaming, not pleading, just watching him. "You're part of this," her voice echoed, distant and hollow. "You always were." He dropped the book, but it clung to his hand, like it knew him. He stumbled from the cave, blinking into daylight. He wasn't under the Hodel house anymore. He was in Echo Park, mouth full of dirt, hands raw, covered in symbols he didn't recognize, carved into his skin with something sharp. A homeless man nearby stared at him and muttered, "It's coming back, you know, the garden. She's almost ready." Hansen ran. Back at the precinct, he was met with silence. No one looked at him. No one spoke. His desk was gone, replaced by a vacant spot like he'd never been there. When he tried to log into the system, his badge number had been revoked. He was no longer Detective Hansen. He was nobody. He went to the hospital, asked for Marcy, the girl he'd saved. But the nurse looked at him strangely. "There's no Marcy Ellison admitted here," she said. "No record of her ever being brought in." He demanded to check the files himself, but they were gone, just gone. He drove home. The door was unlocked. Everything was gone. Furniture, photos, clothing, even the smell, like no one had lived there, ever. Then he saw the writing, scratched into the bathroom mirror in something dark. Who were you before the blood? Switching perspective, the killer. He walks through the museum district now, hands behind his back, wearing a grey suit, clean as paper. No one sees him. Not really. People only see what they expect. That's the trick. He doesn't hide. He just blends. He walks past a photography exhibit, La Noire, Faces of the Forgotten, and smiles, because every face in that room, he took them. With love, with precision, with art. The gallery is almost ready again. One more, just one. But this one has to be special. She must be willing. Back to Hansen, he starts hearing voices. Not from outside. From the book it calls to him. He wakes up one night with it open on his chest. New pages, written. In red, in his own handwriting. She waits beneath. The final bloom is near. You are the gardener now. He starts digging. At night, in vacant lots, in parks, in the desert outside the city. He finds nothing, but he can't stop. He has to find the roots. He has to find her. He finds a woman instead. She's standing at the edge of a freeway overpass. About to jump, he grabs her, pulls her back. She fights him at first, then collapses into his arms. Her name is Lila Crane. 24, dancer, estranged from her family. Sleeping in her car, she fits the pattern. She's the next one. But he doesn't want her to die. He wants to save her. Or maybe something deeper wants him to keep her alive. They go to a diner, sit for hours. She tells him about the dreams. There's this garden, she says, eyes wide, underground, like roots made of hair, and mouths growing from trees. He nods. He's seen it too. That night, he dreams of the slab again, but this time, he's on it. Elizabeth stands above him, scalpel in hand. Her eyes are black, empty. You killed me, she whispers, but I made you. He wakes up screaming. Leela is gone, and in her place, on the motel pillow, is a single Black Dahlia. He drives to 5121 Franklin one last time. There are police cars out front. The house has collapsed in on itself, as if something had swallowed it from below. A sinkhole, they say. But Hansen knows better. It wasn't the earth that caved in. It was the foundation of memory. Inside the rubble, he finds a photo album, unburned, untouched. Inside, girls, dozens. Pages and pages of them, posed like paintings, bound, bleeding, beautiful. One of them is Lila, still alive, tied to the slab, waiting. He hears the killer's voice for the first time, not on a tape, not in a dream, but inside his own skull. Finish the gallery, Henry, or she dies, screaming. Hansen couldn't breathe. He stood in the ruins of 5121 Franklin Avenue, staring at the rubble. The photo album burned into his mind. The faces, the poses, the agony, and the realization that one of those faces was Lila's. She's still alive, he thought. She's still out there, but not for long. The killer had made his move. The garden was nearly complete. The flowers bloomed, ready to blossom once more. Hansen drove all night. His mind was a blur of images. Leela's face, the girls in the album, the slab, the blood-soaked roots. He could hear the killer's voice in his head, whispering, taunting. You have one last choice. Finish the gallery, or you'll be the last one. He arrived at the motel where Leela had been staying. It was quiet, too quiet. The room was empty. Her car was gone. The bed was undisturbed, but the Black Dahlia, The one she had left behind was gone as well. Switching perspective, the killer. The killer watched from the shadows. Hansen was so close now. Too close. It was time. He'd played this game long enough. Watched as the detective stumbled and bled, losing himself with every turn. But this was the final act. It was almost beautiful, really. The killer had always believed he was chosen to bring the city to life, to feed it, to grow it from the inside. The girls were just vessels. The garden was just a means. But Hansen was the final piece. He would complete the ritual, and when it was done, everything would change. The world would open its eyes, and Los Angeles would finally see the truth. Back to Hansen. Hansen sat in his car outside the motel. He had to make a choice. He could drive as far as the road would take him. But he knew, deep down, that the killer wouldn't let him. The game wasn't over. Or he could follow the path that had been carved out for him, the one he had already walked. He had to save Lila, but the price was steep, and the killer was waiting for him to take the final step. The phone rang. Hansen didn't recognize the number, but he answered. "You're running out of time, Henry." It was the killer's voice. "She's waiting. She's already part of the garden. You can't save her. Not anymore." Hansen slammed the phone down. He was done playing. The ground trembled as he drove deeper into the city, toward the one place he knew where it all started, the gallery. He parked in front of the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Boyle Heights. The door was open. A faint light flickered from within. Hansen stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of decay. A strange, sweet odor filled his nose. The garden. In the center of the warehouse, Lila stood, shackled to a chair. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror, but there was something else in them now, something empty. She wasn't fighting anymore. The killer was behind her, hands folded. He wore a white suit now, pristine and immaculate, a stark contrast to the darkness around them. "It's done, Henry," the killer said, his voice soft and sweet. "You've arrived at the final bloom." Hansen couldn't speak. His legs felt like lead, but his mind was racing. The warehouse was full of photographs, hundreds of them. All the girls, all the faces, they were everywhere. "It's all here," the killer continued. "The gallery, the garden, it's yours now. You are the gardener, you are the creator. Finish it, and she will be free." Hansen stepped closer, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Lila's eyes met his. There was no recognition in them, only a deep, guttural scream trapped inside her chest. Her lips moved. "Help me, Henry, help me." But the words were empty. They were hollow, and the killer smiled. "You can't save her," he said. "Not anymore. You never could." The walls seemed to close in on Hansen. He felt something change inside him, something that had been dormant for years. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the scalpel. It felt cold in his hand. And as he looked at Lila, something deep within him snapped. Switching perspective, the killer. The killer stood behind him, watching. It was over. He had won. But as Hansen turned toward him, a strange look in his eyes, something was wrong. Hansen raised the scalpel, not at the killer, not at Lila, but at himself. "You are the final piece," the killer whispered. "You always were." There was no turning back now. The blade cut through Hansen's skin, deep, straight into his chest. Blood spilled from the wound, splattering onto the floor. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Hansen collapsed to the ground, eyes wide. His breath was shallow. Lila's screams echoed in the distance. The warehouse began to shake. The walls cracked. The garden had blossomed. The city was holding its breath. Hansen lay on the cold concrete floor of the warehouse, his body racked with pain. Blood pooled around him, soaking into the floor, staining the photographs. The faces, all the lost souls that had been part of the killer's twisted gallery. His vision blurred, and in that blur, he saw her again. Elizabeth, not the way she had been before, tied to the slab, broken and brutalized, but alive, smiling, her face full of calm. "You were always meant to be here, Henry," she whispered. "You can't escape what you are." The killer stood over him, his expression serene. He looked almost proud. "It's complete, Henry," the killer said. "The gallery, the garden, it's all yours now." But Hansen could barely hear him. His mind was slipping away, drowning in blood and memories. Leela's screams faded in the background. Hansen's hand tightened around the scalpel. He couldn't remember how it had gotten there, but it didn't matter. He could feel it, the ritual that had been pulling him in from the very beginning. "You're one of us now, Henry," the killer said softly. "You've always been one of us." Hansen's vision cleared, just for a moment. And in that moment, he understood. The Black Dahlia, the name, the image, the idea that had plagued him, that had haunted him since he was a child. It wasn't just a murder, it was a symbol, a key. And now, he was part of it. The killer knelt beside him. "There is a garden under this city, Henry. You've always known that. It was in your blood. It was in your bones." The warehouse seemed to stretch, the walls warping and bending. The floor beneath him felt alive, as if something was growing from beneath. It wasn't just the killer's sickening work. It was something older, something that had always been there, feeding on the city's blood. Something that had waited for him. As Hansen's body grew cold, the truth blossomed in his mind. The garden wasn't just a place, it was a power. The killer had always known this, just as he had. It wasn't just about the girls, the rituals, the symbols, the mutilation. It was about feeding something that had waited under the city for centuries. And now, Hansen would join them. His death wasn't a sacrifice. It was a rebirth. The killer smiled, watching Hansen's body begin to twitch, to transform. "You see it now," he whispered. "The garden has many forms, many faces, and you, Henry, will become its keeper." Hansen's eyes opened. The darkness was gone. And in its place, something new was growing. Switching perspective, Lila had been screaming for what felt like hours. But when she looked up, everything stopped. Hansen wasn't dead. Not yet. His body was twitching, convulsing as if something was taking root inside him. The killer was no longer watching. He was waiting for something to awaken. Waiting for the last garden to bloom. Leela's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what to do. She could feel something, a pull deep inside her, urging her to stay. But what could she do? She was bound, helpless. Switching perspective, the killer smiled as he watched the transformation. Hansen was becoming something new, something darker, something better, but it wasn't complete. The garden needed more. It always needed more. The lights in the warehouse flickered, and then everything went black. Hansen's last choice. Hansen opened his eyes, but it wasn't the world he remembered. The cold concrete was gone. The walls had disappeared, replaced by darkness. But there was something pulsing in the air. A presence, something ancient. It wasn't death, it wasn't life. It was something beyond both. The killer was there, watching. "You are one with it now, Henry," he said, his voice echoing like it was coming from everywhere. But Hansen was no longer listening. He was standing. Leela was there, her eyes wide with terror. He could feel her fear. But more than that, he could feel the pull of the garden of the power beneath the city, beneath him. And he understood now. He stepped toward her. Leela screamed, "No, Henry, don't." But it was too late. He was already there. The ground cracked open beneath them. The city was shaking. The garden, the true garden, had awakened. Hansen's transformation was not the end. It was the beginning, the final bloom. The city trembled. People screamed. But no one could stop it. Because the garden was alive, and it would always grow,